I wish things would change faster. I think that I think we're on a path towards calamity in the way that we're living as a society and with our thinking about economy.
Well, our clients engage in SRI primarily because they usually have very strong values associated with environmental or social issues, or just interests in those issues. And they want to make sure that their investments also are not contributing to the negative aspects in society. So they don't want to invest in a fund that, for instance, is engaged in weapons manufacturing or in companies that have poor environmental performance, because they don't live their lives that way. And so they don't necessarily want to see it reflected in their investments either.
I think SRI comes in at one step of enlightenment, so to speak, or more consciousness, where people begin to think beyond simply the maximum accumulation, maximum dollar at all costs.
Well, SRI is short form for socially responsible investing, and it's become the moniker that the industry uses. We used to be known as ethical investing, and we've tended to move away from that. We want to focus more on corporate social responsibility, and that's where the phrase socially responsible investing comes from. That doesn't mean that we have walked away from the ethical side of what we do. It just means that that is the connection with the individual investor, is personal ethics. But our connection is with the corporations into whom we invest, and we're looking at issues around corporate social responsibility.
CSR is actually a sophisticated self-interest of business, because the reality is that if a business does not take into account risk management, does not anticipate future risks, and continues to practice in an unsustainable way, then they're being completely irresponsible to their shareholders. So it's really about balancing the long-term value with the short-term financial goals of an organization.
Some companies have business practices that are unsustainable. They are making short-term decisions, trying to meet analysts' next quarter's expectations of them, that they cannot repeat quarter after quarter because they've cut a corner this quarter to try to continue to grow their profits. But they can't sustain that long term. There are only so many corners that you can cut.
There is one project in particular we're working on right now in Ecuador, and it's with a Canadian company. They're called Ascendant Copper Corporation.
Los politiqueros están preocupados porque el pueblo está organizado y el pueblo está abriendo los ojos cada día más, y no les vamos a permitir volver a mentirnos, a robarnos y a violar nuestros derechos, compañeras y compañeros.
This is a mining company that is interested in doing exploration, and this is in an area that is extremely precious for the planet. It's an area of extreme biodiversity, and it's an area where the communities, some of them would have to be relocated, and the people down there that we have been in touch with, they're not interested in having mining down there.
As organizations are starting to understand everything from their environmental impact, their social impact, and what's happening in the corporate governance and environment, they're recognizing that, you know what, these things actually can come back to depreciate our business or actually cause harm to our bottom line if we don't proactively manage them.
Investment management firms like Meritus have taken our position as an owner of the company which allows us into the boardroom to dialogue with the management of the company. It's not activism necessarily in the negative sense of the word. It's working with the companies to make them better corporate citizens.
I've really felt that the role of the socially responsible investment movement has been extremely significant in the response of companies on these issues when they've been raised by shareholders as opposed to grassroots campaigns. When I first started Verite, there were quite a few campaigns that were led by various groups, but in many cases the companies tried to dismiss them in the media or wouldn't engage with those groups at all. And it wasn't until we started seeing shareholder resolutions and the SRIs getting actively involved that the companies at the annual meetings had to address the questions.
The impact of SRI will be to level, eventually over time, will be to level the playing field between companies so that those companies who are operating at a low standard will not enjoy a competitive advantage over those companies who are acting responsibly.
Friends of the Earth Canada in general wholeheartedly supports all of this kind of thing and knows that this is the best approach to, or one of the best approaches to getting corporations to change.
Does social investment make a difference? Does being an active owner make a difference? Can we change behavior? And the answer is yes. And it's one of those situations where I can provide you with a lot of different singular anecdotes. So Home Depot decides that it is going to put only Forest Stewardship Council certified wood on its shelves. That wasn't just shareholder activism that was responsible for that. It was shareholder activists working with civil society.
One of the main ways that I think that NGOs could help out the SRI organizations is to actually get down and talk to grassroots level, be talking to the public about the issues. And so we can be helping in that sense to get the word out that this is what's going on in these places abroad that Canadian corporations are doing, and we need to start thinking about ethical funds. And so I think that's a great way that NGOs can be spreading the word to the Canadian public.
There's lots of forces that need to work together in order for companies to make positive change. There's the push of the stakeholders, and there's also the pull of the capital markets that need to happen. And SRI is basically that beginning to happen.
Our underlying philosophy is that being good corporate citizens is good for long-term shareholder value. And I can see instances where that's played out, particularly around things like pollution prevention. Companies that are reducing their air emissions, reducing their waste, are actually making more money. I mean, they become more efficient. Companies that are more energy efficient have a better bottom line. I mean, those things are almost patently obvious on the face of it.
It makes intuitive sense that that companies who treat their employees and their environment, all their stakeholders well, perform well. And if that's the case, and there's no reason why we shouldn't be both investing in companies that do so and encouraging all companies to raise the bar and improve their performance.
So why do SRI? To me, the better question is why not do it? The traditional arguments are that it was difficult to do, or maybe it would reduce investment returns. But these arguments have absolutely gone up in smoke. So bottom line is, it's easy to do SRI, it feels better, it's a positive force for change in the world, and it doesn't reduce investment return. In fact, it may even enhance it. There's 4 reasons often brought out as to why it actually outperforms. The first one is a really obvious one. Many company risks and liabilities are reduced. Let's say tobacco companies, or say a company that has a valuable piece of real estate, but it's become contaminated with heavy metals, it loses its value. A second one is that it's often argued that socially responsible investors take a longer term view. Wall Street is often criticized for being very short term, so analysts may be very concerned about whether a tobacco company is going to have better earnings in the next quarter or not, maybe socially responsible investment's better because they actually sit down and think about the big question of whether you really want to be invested in tobacco. A third argument would be that companies that are socially responsible tend to be on the right side of mass social currents. So if, for example, if people in general are becoming more environmentally conscious, two companies coming out with the same product, one that is disposable and one that's recyclable, let me tell you, the people with the recyclable product have got an advantage. The last point I think is the most powerful of all. In conventional investment theory, there's pretty much 100% agreement that the single most important factor about getting a good investment is the quality of the management. Now, I would argue that quality management tends to avoid bad labor relations, environmental liabilities, sweatshop issues. So maybe the secret of SRI is that it doesn't work at all. It just happens to find the best managements.
Are there any downsides that I can think of about socially responsible investing? And you know what? That's a tough one. There's so many positive aspects to it, to the individuals who invest in it, the way that they feel good and rewarded about their investments, the impact that it has on the communities. I think on the whole there are just so many positive elements to it that it just makes a ton of sense.
It's an opportunity for someone to say, it's time that I align my investment portfolio with my personal mission statement. I work every day towards what I want to achieve, what I want to see in society around me. I shop at some companies and I avoid other companies because of that, and yet I'm working towards one goal and having my money work at cross purposes to me day in and day out. And it's finally taking a holistic approach towards life and saying, money can make the world go around. It certainly does make it go around. This is my little bit of money, so I'm spinning the world the way I want it to go.